All right, welcome back. We are doing value scale number 2, and we created our template in the last video. Now we're going to start shading with our 4H pencil. So right where that notch is, I just want you to take your 4H pencil, you're holding it far away, and you want to shade just with the lightest pressure possible, going diagonally. And you want to stagger your shading. You don't want to keep your shading all in one line. And what I mean by that, and I'll take an HB pencil so you can see what I'm doing here. When I say stagger your shading, I'm still shading close together, but it kind of looks like one of those earthquake seismographs. It's kind of uneven on the edges on purpose, because if you're trying to blend those two things together, it's easier to blend in staggered shading than it is to blend in things that you just shade in one line. So this is the wrong way to shade. So if you try to shade in that way, usually you'll see a nice seam there. That's what you don't want to do. So nice staggered shading with your side of your pencil. So that's the motion I'm doing. I'm just showing you with my HB pencil. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this back over, and I'm doing the same thing, but with just my 4H pencil. If you accidentally have a dark spot, that's okay. That's what we're going to be using our kneaded eraser for. So I'm just doing really close shading, just going in one direction. And as it goes to the left-hand side, that's going to fade to white. So you just want to kind of let up even more, almost barely gliding upon your paper as you're going to the left-hand side. But right at that first notch, that's where you want to start your 4H shading. And right now, I'm just going all in the same direction. You can tell it's a 4H because you can hear that scratchy sound. It's a hard lead, so it is a lot lighter pencil. And once you have a good diagonal going on, I'm going to go ahead and move this. You want to also go in the opposite diagonal to blend that in. So I'm actually going to turn and rotate my paper a little bit. And again, I'm starting kind of at that area, that notch where I said begin 4H, and I'm doing the opposite diagonal. I'm staggering my shading so it blends in a little bit better. And it's okay to go off of your paper, like if your shading goes beyond the template that you drew. You can always erase super light shading. Now when you first begin this activity, you'll notice some waffling happening. That's probably because you're just on your second layer. It can also happen if you don't keep your shading close together. So if you see like a waffle or a plaid pattern happening, it's just because that you're not shading close enough. So make sure that you're shading nice and close, and that as you're going to the left-hand side, you're just fading to white. So you just want to go in that opposite diagonal. And when you get to a good spot where you feel like it's starting to blend together, you can start to go up and down. Once you start going up and down, you'll start to see it blend in a lot more. The more layers you add, the darker it's going to get. So as I start shading to the right, we want to start putting more layers on. So I'm just going up and down. And right now I'm going off my paper a little bit, and that's okay because I can erase that later. So I'm taking my 4H and I'm just going back in a diagonal again real quick. And you want to go kind of all the way to HB. All right, so we went diagonally, we went in the opposite diagonal, we went up and down. Now we're going to go left and right, but again, it's really hard to shade left and right. So I'm going to turn my paper upside down, and I'm just going to shade up and down like this. And as I'm looking at my paper now, because I'm on my fourth layer of 4H shading, I'm really keeping an eye out on making sure it's well blended and making sure that it's gradually changing. And we have some tools to kind of help us out along the way. But 4H, it takes a longer time to gradually see what's going on. And to build those values, it does take time. So about the 4th layer, you'll start to see a real difference. So I'm looking at my shading right now. If I squint my eyes, it's looking pretty good. I do have a dark spot right there. So what a good tool to use is what's called the kneaded eraser. And I can just tap, 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 and I can easily fill that back in. If this area is not totally white, that's okay. You just can tap, 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 and lift up that pencil. So if there's not a good gradual change on that left-hand side, just tap with your kneaded eraser and just keep on adding. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more right here. And each time I'm changing my direction. So if you notice while I'm drawing, I'm going diagonally, I'm going up and down, and I'm shifting those changes. So right now I have a really good gradient from white to a little bit of 4H. As I go through my next notch right here, I want to see it change a little bit more. So in order to do that, I just need to use more layers. So I'm using more layers. I'm starting off with a diagonal, and then the opposite diagonal. And as you add more layers, you don't have to shade as close together. And I'm staggering my shading. It's blending in really well. And I want to go with my 4H all the way to my HB. I don't want like a distinct line where I stopped and started, because that would look really bad and that would be really hard to blend. If you notice, I'm just changing up my shading. And every now and then you do want to rotate your paper and just add more layers. If you try to add pressure with the 4H, more than likely you're going to see lines. So make sure that you're shading with your 4H pencil, with the side of your pencil, and that you're patient. So patience is the key with a 4H pencil. You have to keep on going. As you're looking at it as a whole, you might notice, oh, this needs shaded in a little bit more, oh, this needs blended in a little bit more, and that's perfectly normal. So throughout this exercise, we'll spot things, and you'll spot things on your own paper where you'll need to fix. So I'm just shading away. If I want this area to blend in more, I just take my kneaded eraser and I just tap, tap, tap on my value scale, and then you can re-add more if you took too much away. So as you're working on this, squint your eyes, see if there's an area like right here. I went a little too dark, so I can just tap on that, blend it in. And when you're tapping, make sure that you're re-kneading your eraser, because sometimes it can get dirty if it picks up too much. So I'm just going through and I'm evening things out. Now sometimes it can get a little frustrating, like you maybe have gone over it a couple times and it's just not blending. My best advice to you is to just simply change up the direction in which you're shading. So I noticed this area here had a lot of different blotchy areas. I'm just going over it and making sure that it's well blended, and the key is just squint your eyes, like take a step back. Sometimes you just need to walk away from it for a couple minutes before you come back to it. So that's how you go from light to 4H to a little bit darker with the 4H, going all the way to HB. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and start with our HB pencil, and I'll see you in the next video.